Hey guys, welcome back to Complicated Things. Today, Mark and I are out here in California. We're shooting supercars for Rob Report's Car of the Year. This morning, we've been shooting this super sexy Ferrari and this economy McLaren.
In this episode, we're going to talk to you about something that's almost as sexy as these supercars, and that is budget. Now, just because we're shooting $500,000 worth of cars right now does not mean that we have $500,000 worth of budget. So we're going to go through with you some of the ways that we created our budget for this shoot.
And we're also going to help you guys figure out what you need to plan for when figuring out the budget for your next job.
So my buddy Rob calls me up and says, "Hey, do you and Alex want to come to California again and shoot some supercars?" My first thought, of course, is, yay! But my second thought is, what? What's the budget?
Yeah, so we're in New York City, so as soon as we hear California, we're already thinking, what's the cost of airfare? What's the cost of hotels? How much will car rentals and fuel cost us?
Budget is a grind. But if you don't plan everything out meticulously in advance, you can end up being out of pocket on the job. And every project is unique. Alex and I have been doing this supercar thing every year for the last few years, but there are always slightly different circumstances that affect our budget. One of our big line items for this project is travel, but this year we also had to budget for rapid COVID tests for all of our crew members, which is not cheap. So it's really important to think carefully about the budget for each project in order to avoid surprise costs that will end up coming out your pocket.
Right, so as soon as you get a lead on a new job, start thinking about how much it'll cost to execute. Depending on the project and the client, you might have a set budget or they might be willing to negotiate with you. Either way, you need to be able to figure out whether the budget you're working with will actually be effective for the job you're trying to produce.
Or not.
No.
I always think about budget in a couple of terms, hard cost and soft costs.
I bet you do.
Hard costs are set costs that have almost no wiggle room or flexibility. Generally, hard costs are costs someone else is charging you. For example, travel, plane tickets, Uber rides. If you're driving a long way to get to the job, gas and tolls, equipment rental. Do you own your own cameras or equipment? Are you paying a hard cost to rent them? Food. Are you paying for catering for the whole crew? How many meals? Is it just coffee and bagels, or are you splurging on something fancy for your clients? Crew. Are you hiring a photo assistant or hair and makeup artist? Location. If you're shooting on location, is there a location fee? How much is a studio rental going to cost you?
Yeah, there's a lot to look at. To give you a better picture, here are some of the hard costs for our California project. First, car service to and from the airport, plane tickets, baggage fees, which add up fast.
Very fast.
Yeah, production vehicles. In this instance, we had a minivan to move crew around, and then we had a Class B motorhome with a generator for on-site production. Gas, diesel fuel, hotel rooms, food for a 4-person crew for 8 days, not including the professional drivers provided for us by the magazine.
We had donuts pretty much for 8 days.
We did. COVID test, and then we have our equipment costs. We mostly bought our own equipment, but we had to make some additional purchases for redundancy's sake. For example, we brought a drone with us that already was pretty beat up and had some wear and tear. And we went ahead and bought a new drone and shipped it out there in the event that the first drone broke, which it did in glorious fashion. Are you ashamed?
Yeah, I just don't want to think about the first drone. Soft costs are costs that are more flexible. Generally, soft costs involve costs that you are charging the client. For example, equipment. I bring my own equipment when I shoot and I charge a rental fee. I have a little bit of flexibility there because I'm determining the cost, but I need to charge something in order to compensate for the use of my equipment and the depreciation of my equipment when I have to replace it.
Yeah. Something to remember about equipment rental fees is that even though it's potentially a soft cost, if you own all your own equipment, it is still a cost. I can't afford to not charge for my equipment. And if I give my client a discount on my equipment rental fees, that means I'm losing money. So while equipment rental is a soft cost potentially, in that you can choose to raise or lower it, you have to remember that you will lose money if you go below the minimum.
In the long run, definitely, you're going to lose money.
Fast.
Yeah.
Other soft costs might include retouching, insurance, or digital archiving. As far as retouching, am I going to hire a retoucher or can I do it myself? Insurance, am I paying to have my equipment insured? And I'm paying for the liability insurance? Probably I am, and not just for the one day, but all year long. Am I going to charge you for that, or am I just going to take it on the chin? Digital archiving, how long will I store assets for you and how much will I charge for that? And really, how much is that going to cost me?
Yeah, I mean, if you're cloud storing and you've got 40 terabytes, that's going to start costing you.
A lot.
Exactly. All of these costs vary from person to person and from project to project. For example, retouching is a soft cost for me because I do 99% of my own retouching. I've been doing it for 20 years and I really enjoy it. But it's a soft cost because it's my time. Now, before you decide to retouch your own photos, ask yourself, how long is it going to take you? And more importantly, are you good enough to do it? If it's going to take you forever and the results are not going to be as good, maybe it might be worth hiring a retoucher.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, soft costs are still real cost. Your rental fee or your insurance fee isn't just free money for you if you're billing your client for it. You are spending that money on all these things, and these charges and fees help compensate you for that. But don't go into it thinking that you're gonna make a bunch of extra cash by charging your client for all these line items.
Because you're not.
Because you're not.
You're not. For example, take digital archiving. Let's say you charge your client $150 to store photos or videos for 5 years. That sort of feels like free money. But really it isn't, because now you're responsible for fulfilling that contract and you're going to end up paying for the hard drives or server or however you choose to store the assets. And if the client reaches out to you in 4.5 years and says, can I have my photos? You're actually legally responsible to have them, not free money. Hidden costs, scary. Now, what we mean by hidden costs is surprise fees or things you might not budget for. For example, you might call up a studio and ask, how much is it to rent the studio for a day? And they tell you it's $1,000. Well, the first question you should ask them is, what other costs are involved? I've been in studios that have charged $50 a day for using their phone or internet, or $100 a day extra if you want to use the lunchbox for electricity.
Or a specific studio on the west side that charges $100 for pens and paper.
Yeah, or pens and paper. It's your responsibility to find out exactly what the charges are.
Yeah, well, a lot of hair and makeup artists and stylists will charge a day rate. But if they're represented, which a lot of the good ones are, there's also a potential that you're supposed to pay their agency fee on top of that. Or maybe you have to pay for their assistant for pre-production days, and that has nothing to do with their day rate. Or maybe they're going to charge you a kit fee. So you need to get as much information as you can up front so you can plan for these.
There's tons of little things like this, and a lot of things I think of as hidden fees are not really hidden. They're just things I've forgotten to budget for. For example, if I hire a photo assistant for $300 and we're quite far away and he needs transportation, I've got to give it to him, it's another $50 for his Ubers. The point is you need to double and triple check costs with everyone and ask if there are any additional fees you might be missing. If your client asks you for a budget, always leave some wiggle room, because there is a good chance they're going to want to negotiate.
Yeah, so something a lot of people do is make the mistake of trying to land a client by giving them the smallest number they possibly can. And I'm going to tell you right now, that'll always come back to bite you in the ass. First, if a client pushes back and asks for a lower number, you're screwed. You've already devalued yourself as much as you can. But also, you're going to make it a lot harder to score high-paying jobs in the future because you had to cut significant corners to get that bare minimum number in the first place.
Yeah, coming in super cheap, you're never going to be seen as anything apart from the cheap guy. When they've got no money for a shoot, they're going to go, oh, let's go to so-and-so, he's a cheap guy.
Super cheap.
And you're cheap. And you're never going to be anything else in their eyes.
But don't overshoot either.
The key is devising a budget that gives you just a bit of flexibility. So say you think the budget needs to be around $7,000, maybe ask for 8. That way, when the client wants you to lower it, you'll have some room to negotiate. They'll be happy they got a little bit of discount. You're still happy because you're making just about what you needed to make, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, and if they don't try to renegotiate, you just came out with a little bit of extra income.
Correct. The final part of the puzzle is, what is the job worth? What is my fee? I've set rates for certain kind of jobs, so I know how much to charge for an advertising client or a private CEO portrait, but it can be challenging in other situations to determine your worth.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, determining your fee is a pretty complicated thing. The first thing
Complicated thing.
Oh my God. It's the theme song. No, the first thing you need to do is calculate your cost of doing business, which is something we're going to talk about in depth in a future episode. But then you also need to think about what you're bringing to the table in terms of skills and experience.
Yeah, what you're bringing that nobody else can.
That's right.
Yeah. And if the fee is lower than you think about whether the job is actually worth doing. I don't believe in working for exposure. Exposure does not pay my rent. No. You know, I don't buy it. But I will do a job for less money sometimes if it's personally rewarding, creatively rewarding, or it gives me access to someone I wouldn't be able to photograph otherwise. Like if you give me the chance to photograph Barack Obama again, I'll do that regardless of fee, maybe.
I would, for sure.
If expenses are covered.
I'd pay out of my pocket to do it. Finally, don't forget to ask for an advance. It can be really scary to tell your client they need to pay you up front, but you have to do it. Let's say you're doing a job where the production cost is $10K and the fee is going to be around $5K for a grand total of $15,000. Are you comfortable spending $10,000 on travel and equipment and then just having that sitting on your credit card until you get paid for the job? Not only are you going to get charged interest on your credit card, but you're also going to have all that money out, which is going to prevent you from having the credit available to take on future jobs.
Not to mention jobs fall through, so get that advance. You know, it will give you an added bit of security as you're getting ready to do the job. If you cannot get the advance, please, and I'm saying this from experience because I've messed up on this, make sure you have a physical signature on your estimate and your payment terms. Super important.
Yeah. Budgeting is kind of the worst, guys, and by kind of, it is the absolute worst part of the job. But knowing how to do it will really up your game and help you make money. And once you get your budget worked out, you can focus on the really fun stuff, actually making content.
Yeah. The good news, folks, if you do all of this correctly now, eventually you will have a producer who will do a lot of the budgeting for you. The producer is the golden god of photography and makes all these problems disappear so you can focus on what you do best. Really hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back soon. I'm Mark Mann.
I'm Alex Hooks.
And we're Complicated Things.
Later, guys.